If you've ever asked your partner, "Do you still love me?" for the third time this week, and felt better for exactly 20 minutes before the doubt crept back in, you already know something that most relationship advice won't tell you. Reassurance doesn't just fail to fix anxiety. Sometimes it feeds it. Welcome back. Today we're looking at 7 signs that what feels like building trust in your relationship might actually be a loop of reassurance-seeking, a pattern that soothes you in the moment but quietly trains your brain to need more soothing tomorrow. And by the end of this video, you'll understand not just why this happens, but what to do instead, using tools grounded in real psychological research. Let's start with a distinction that changes everything: the difference between trust and reassurance. Trust is a felt sense of safety that you build over time, through evidence, through your own internal reasoning, through your nervous system learning, slowly, that you can tolerate uncertainty without falling apart. Reassurance, on the other hand, is an external fix. It's asking someone else to manage your anxiety for you, right now, in this moment. And the tricky part is that reassurance feels almost identical to trust from the inside. Both bring relief. Both bring a wave of calm. But only one of them lasts. Here are the 7 signs. As we go through them, notice if any feel uncomfortably familiar. That discomfort is useful information, not something to judge yourself for. Sign 1, you ask the same question in different words. "Do you love me?" becomes, "Are we okay?" becomes, "You tell me if something was wrong, right?" The wording changes, but the underlying request is identical: "Please calm me down again." Sign 2, the relief you feel after reassurance fades fast. Minutes, sometimes hours. Real trust tends to have a longer half-life. Reassurance is more like a painkiller than a cure, it treats the symptom, not the source. Sign 3, you feel a compulsive pull to check their phone, their tone of voice, how quickly they text back. This isn't really about gathering evidence. It's about regulating a feeling in your body that showed up before you even knew what triggered it. Sign 4, your partner has started to sound tired when they reassure you. Not cruel, just worn down. This is often the clearest external sign that the pattern has become a loop rather than a one-time conversation. Sign 5, you find yourself testing them, creating small scenarios just to see how they respond. Not out of malice, but out of a genuine, almost desperate need for data. Sign 6, apologizing for needing reassurance, and then needing it again within the hour. The apology itself becomes part of the cycle. And sign 7, deep down, you suspect that no answer would ever be enough. Even a perfect, loving response only quiets things temporarily. If this is you, take a breath, this isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system pattern, and nervous system patterns can be retrained. That's exactly what the rest of this video is going to show you how to do. So why does this happen? To understand it, we need to look at how the brain handles uncertainty, and a concept from behavioral psychology called negative reinforcement. Here's the mechanism. Anxiety shows up as a signal, something like, "I might be unsafe, I might be unloved, I might be abandoned." That signal creates real physical discomfort, a tight chest, a racing mind, a pull toward action. So you ask for reassurance. Your partner responds warmly. The discomfort drops. And your brain does something very simple and very powerful, it logs that sequence as a success. Anxiety appeared, you sought reassurance, discomfort disappeared. Behavior reinforced. This is the same basic mechanism behind compulsive checking behavior studied in anxiety research more broadly. The relief isn't imagined, it's real, measurable, and immediate. But that immediacy is exactly the trap. Because the brain doesn't code the reassurance as, "the relationship is secure." It codes the asking as the thing that worked. So the next time uncertainty shows up, the brain doesn't reach for internal steadiness. It reaches for the phone, or the question, or the test. The path of least resistance has already been carved. Researchers who study obsessive-compulsive patterns describe something almost identical happening with reassurance-seeking in relationships and health anxiety. The specific worry doesn't really matter. What matters is the cycle: doubt, seek relief, get temporary relief. Doubt returns faster and slightly stronger than before, because the underlying uncertainty was never actually resolved. It was only paused. There's also a deeper layer worth naming gently: attachment style. Psychologists who study adult attachment describe how early relationships teach us implicit rules about whether closeness is safe and reliable. If your early experience involved unpredictable caregiving, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, without a clear pattern, your nervous system may have learned that safety has to be actively monitored and reconfirmed, because it can disappear without warning. That's not a diagnosis, and it's not destiny. It's simply useful context for why reassurance can feel less like a preference and more like a physical necessity in certain moments. Here's the key reframe, the one sentence to hold on to through the rest of this video: reassurance regulates the feeling, but it doesn't update the underlying belief. The belief, something like, "I am fundamentally unsafe in this relationship unless I get proof," stays fully intact, sometimes even strengthens, because it's never actually tested. You never get to find out what would happen if you sat with the discomfort instead of neutralizing it immediately. And that untested belief is what keeps generating new anxiety, again and again, no matter how many times it's temporarily quieted. The good news is that exactly because this is a learned pattern, it can be relearned. Not by eliminating reassurance entirely, that's not the goal, and it's not realistic, but by changing your relationship to the anxiety underneath it. That's what we'll build in the next section. Let's talk about what actually works, starting with the first core tool: self-soothing that targets the body, not just the mind. Because reassurance-seeking often starts as a physical sensation before it becomes a thought, trying to reason your way out of it in the moment rarely works. You're bringing a logical argument to a physiological event. Instead, the goal is to widen what psychologists sometimes call your window of tolerance, your capacity to feel discomfort without needing to immediately discharge it through someone else. A simple, well-supported practice here is what's sometimes called the physiological sigh, a technique studied for its effect on the nervous system's stress response. 2 inhales through the nose, the second one short and sharp, followed by one long, slow exhale through the mouth. Do this 3 or 4 times when the urge to seek reassurance spikes. You're not trying to make the feeling disappear. You're proving to your own nervous system that you can stay present with it and come out the other side intact. That proof is what starts to build actual internal safety, the kind reassurance can never fully provide, because it comes from someone else. The second core tool is building evidence-based trust, deliberately, almost like a practice, rather than waiting for it to arrive on its own. This means keeping what you might call a trust ledger, even just mentally. Not, "Did they say the right thing when I asked," but, "What have they consistently done over time? Do they follow through on plans? Do they show up during hard weeks? Do they repair after conflict, even imperfectly?" Cognitive behavioral approaches to anxiety often use a version of this technique, gathering disconfirming evidence deliberately, rather than passively waiting for anxiety to be argued out of existence in a single conversation. The distinction matters. One instance of reassurance is a data point. A pattern, observed over weeks and months, is evidence. Your anxious brain is drawn to the first because it's fast. But only the second actually changes the underlying belief. A useful practice: at the end of each week, write down one concrete thing your partner did that reflected care or reliability, not something they said in response to your worry, but something they simply did. Over time, this becomes a written record your nervous system can return to that isn't dependent on asking anyone anything in the moment. The third tool is learning to communicate the insecurity itself, rather than disguising it as a question that demands a specific comforting answer. There's a real difference between asking, "Do you still love me?" which puts your partner in the position of performing reassurance on demand, and saying, "I'm feeling anxious tonight, not because of anything you did, but I wanted to name it rather than test you." The second version does something powerful: it invites connection without requiring your partner to solve your internal state. It also, over time, retrains the pattern itself, because you're practicing tolerating the vulnerability of naming the feeling instead of immediately neutralizing it through someone else's response. This kind of direct naming also does something quietly important for the relationship itself. It shifts you from being someone who needs managing to someone who is self-aware and communicative, which, paradoxically, tends to build far more trust from your partner's side than repeated requests for reassurance ever could. Most partners don't resent vulnerability. What tends to wear people down is the loop, the sense that no answer is ever quite enough. Naming the feeling honestly breaks that loop, because it doesn't ask for a performance. It simply asks to be witnessed. It's worth saying plainly, none of this means reassurance is bad, or that you should never ask for it again. Healthy relationships absolutely involve reassurance. It's a normal, human part of intimacy. The goal isn't to eliminate it. The goal is to notice when it's become the only tool in the toolbox, the automatic first response to every wave of doubt, rather than one option among several. A relationship with zero reassurance isn't the target. A relationship where you're not dependent on it is. If you recognized yourself in several of these 7 signs tonight, here's a small, doable starting point. The next time the urge to ask for reassurance shows up, try pausing for just 60 seconds first. Use the breathing technique we covered. Notice the sensation in your body without acting on it immediately. Then decide, do you still want to ask? Sometimes you will, and that's completely fine. But that 60-second pause is where the real change happens. It's the first small piece of evidence that you can tolerate the feeling without immediately needing someone else to make it disappear. And small pieces of evidence like that, repeated over time, are precisely what rewires the pattern. This isn't about becoming someone who needs nothing. It's about becoming someone whose sense of safety doesn't live entirely in someone else's next response, because that's an exhausting place for safety to live, both for you and for the person you love. Real security is built slowly, through evidence, through tolerating uncertainty in small doses, and through learning to name what you feel instead of testing for it. It's less immediate than reassurance. But it's the kind that actually lasts. If this video helped you see your own patterns a little more clearly, consider subscribing. We break down the psychology behind relationship patterns like this every week, always grounded in real research, always aimed at helping you understand yourself with more compassion, not less. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.